Uh-oh. Where are they running to? Thank you, Trump! 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 Oh, wow. Where are they running to?
Welcome back, everyone. We have another interesting video for you guys on deck. At least I think it should be interesting. We're going to be going over what we know now based on what we have been told by various different entities, as well as various folks on the internet who have been doing some independent journalism as well, and kind of rolling it into this video that you are watching right now. And we're going to try to answer what we know now, and probably more importantly at the end, we're going to go over what we don't know. And that, in my opinion, is probably the most surprising thing given where we're at. So I'm filming this right now literally a week after it happened, and the fact that we have so many unknowns is disturbing. It should be disturbing for anybody who lives in a free society, right? So as of right now, like the Secret Service and the FBI, they haven't done any press conferences answering journalist questions, nothing like that. And I understand that these things take time to kind of understand from a investigative standpoint, but really very, very little has come out, and what has come out has been pretty bad. So I suppose with that, let's get into it. So we made that video on Monday, sort of initial analysis of the scene itself, and some more interesting stuff has come out from then. A lot of the sources are going to be, just general news in this, as well as a few others. Dan Bongino, who is a former Secret Service agent, we're going to be citing some of his work several times because he has obviously inside contact as well as inside knowledge of Secret Service operations as it pertains to protective details. A couple other folks have done really good work, particularly over on Twitter and other places. Oliver Alexander, we're going to talk about a couple of his diagrams. Chris Martinson as well, I believe he is a PhD, as well as Mike Adams. So we're definitely going to reference all of that. If you guys are looking just for any of the source stuff in this, check out my Twitter page. I think actually all of it. I think everything I'm going to talk about is directly linked to on my Twitter page, and most of this is going to be since Monday. So you don't have to search that far back in my history if you guys want to see the actual documentation itself. So basically, what do we know now versus what we knew before? So the shooter lived an hour away. We knew that before. Essentially, the site where all of this happened was a farm place that holds events. So, for example, I believe they have a tractor event coming up August 8th. So they hold events where people from the community gather to see different things happening, whether it be a presidential rally or a tractor, sale. So those are the kind of things that happen here. So it does have a fence. We've learned that around a lot of the area, but not all of it. And it also has, of course, the buildings, I believe it was the AGM building, where we believe that the shooter was set up in. And we've also learned that there was a fourth counter-sniper team. So in Monday's video, we had identified that there were at least 3, and now we know that there are at least 4. 2 of those being Secret Service counter-sniper teams, and 2 of them being local police. And so one of the problems that we're going to get into with this video and the reporting here is going to be very often. Local police is a term that is used very loosely by the media as well as primary sources. So the local police there, Butler, I believe it is, has 12 police officers, patrol officers in the department. So a very, very small department. However, a couple of those guys did play into what we're going to talk about here throughout this video. And then additionally on site, we had state police, we had Homeland Security agents, we had U.S. Marshals on scene as well at the time of the attack, and very likely sheriff's agents, sheriff's deputies as well. I haven't seen a ton of info on that, but it just seems obvious that would be the case. The local police was designated, meaning Butler, they were designated to control traffic, but as we will see as we get into this video a little bit more, they ended up actually doing a little bit more than just actually running traffic. So with that, a few other things that we have learned about the shooter ahead of time is that according to multiple reports, he reconned the site a week prior. Let's talk about the event itself. It was announced on the 3rd, i.e. the rally. The person who we believe, Crooks, who we believe was the actual main shooter here, registered for the event online on the 7th. And we believe, according to several people, several reporters at this point, that he visited the site approximately a week prior. Again, he lived an hour away. And what we don't know is, did he drop off any equipment, i.e. a rifle, etc. at that time, or did he arrive on site the day of the rally with it? That has still kind of not been known, which is kind of insane, given all the security cameras that were in the area, given all the security cameras that were on him the day of the event as he traveled to multiple places, according to initial FBI reports. So we also learned that he flew a drone over the site via a pre-planned route on the day of, so the morning of. So what I've also learned is that apparently there were no law enforcement drones being used during the event. So everything that we've heard so far says that there was nothing, no thermal drones, no overhead drones, and that is one of the reasons, of course, that led to what we think anyway is that he was on the roof for at least 26 minutes. So the shooter in question, Crooks, flew a drone over a pre-planned route. So if it is a pre-planned route, why is that important? More likely than not, if you have a pre-planned route, you're checking things. So probably checking rooftops, probably checking entry points, things like that. So that's very likely what he was doing. And in order to have it pre-planned, you have to kind of have reconned it ahead of time, right? So he's probably made more than one trip there. And on the day of, he flew a drone over a pre-planned route. That is interesting. Additionally, his cell phone was recovered, and several things have come out of that. One of them has been that his parents began to text him at 1 p.m. Now, again, just to back up a little bit, person identified to be the main shooter, Crooks, is a 20-year-old who lived with his parents about an hour away. That is important. We will get into that for a couple different reasons throughout the video, but according to his phone, his parents started to text him around 1 p.m. And of course, the actual shooting happened just after 6 p.m. And then it's also been reported that his parents called police sometime in between 1 and 6 p.m. to report that their son was missing and that they were worried. Now that's interesting because you know, I had moved out of my house by the time I was 20 years old. I did not live with my parents, but if I did, hypothetically, if I had lived with my parents when I was 20 years old, I don't think my parents would have ever called the police if I was missing, quote unquote, and that they were worried about me when I was 20 years old during the day. I mean, that just seems very strange to me. So that indicates that perhaps there was some thoughts on the parents' mind that something might be wrong long before any of this ever went down. With that initial information dump out of the way, one thing I do want to do is revisit sort of where everyone was at the time, because I think it's important for everyone to understand. So this image right here, we have the approximate location of the shooter when he was killed in relation to President Trump, as well as the two counter sniper teams. Again, for our illustrations, we're going to note the ones that are closest to him as counter sniper team 1, and counter sniper team 2 is going to be slightly further away. Now let's talk about the sniper teams here. In my previous video, we had identified 3. Again, news reports had said that there were 4. So we know that 2 of them, again, according to media reports, were actual uniform agents of the Secret Service, trained counter sniper teams. That's all they do. And we know that 2 of them were quote-unquote local police. Judging by their uniforms, most likely these people are Pennsylvania state troopers. And where are they positioned? So that's going to get us into one of the craziest pieces of news that we've learned so far. So we have the team that everyone is most familiar with. Again, in our illustration is going to be Counter Sniper Team 1. That is the uniformed Secret Service. The guys next to them on the barn are going to be, my opinion anyway, state police. And then a bomb dropped basically right after I dropped my video. The Secret Service director stated that there were quote unquote local law enforcement, again, which is a confusing term, we have to keep that in mind, was in the building that the shooter was on. And another term that is getting loosely used in this breakdown and media reportings is going to be in the building. Sorry about the wind, guys, we got a storm rolling in here in a little bit. But in the building, when they say in the building, I think they mean the complex of buildings that is all interconnected where the shooter was on. There's multiple reports of the shooter climbing up several roofs, which would make sense that he went from a couple different rooftops according to several different eyewitnesses. So he was probably moving around looking for an advantageous position based on the ones he probably pre-scouted out. Now we know where Sniper Team 3 was, and we're going to get into Sniper Team 3 a little bit later on in the video with some audio analysis. That very likely, according to all available resources right now, was also a Secret Service counter sniper team. And then again, like I was saying, local law enforcement was in the building where the shooter was located. And what ended up coming out after that in follow-up questions is that it was stated rather that they were in the second floor window of the actual building where the shooter was. And if you actually look at a map, basically it's pretty obvious the ones you would pick. If you were going to pick a counter sniper location inside of a building, there's a few that basically there's a few different windows there that would be the most obvious for that. Depending on which window that team took, it's going to change, rather I should say, where their fields of fire are. Additionally, the variables in terms of what they can see and what they can engage is going to depend on how deep in the room they are. Additionally, different walls within the structure that I don't know, I have no idea of, and how they can set up at different angles. And I don't know if both of them were set up, i.e., so if the room is open, basically if you set one sniper up on one side, one sniper up on the other side, you can kind of interlock fields of fire and have a wider dispersion of area that you can watch. However, I don't know any of that information, but it will become important later on in the video. Continuing down here, you guys can see this graphic here, the two counter sniper teams that are most obviously discussed. The shooter, again, approximately 450 feet away. I think that's pretty accurate. And then we have an elevation chart that I think is interesting as well, because a lot of people in my first video were surprised to see that the counter sniper teams 1 and 2, generally speaking, weren't much higher, if they are higher at all, than the actual shooter. But you can see the height here of where they were actually located. Now the height of sniper team 3, we don't know exactly. However, it is going to be a little bit taller than the building that the shooter was on. And but by how much is hard to tell. On Google Earth, it looks like it's about 25 feet off the ground. So not tremendously higher, but definitely higher. Now, if you look at the actual building behind where the shooter was located, where that counter sniper team is located, that's again probably about another 8 feet higher than where the shooter was. So that is the layout and what we know now in terms of where everyone was on the field. Before diving into why sniper team number 4 would ever be in that building, we do need to thank one of the sponsors of today's video, and that is the United States Concealed Carry Association, also known as the USCCA. They have recently revamped their program that we're going to get into here in just a second, but for those that don't know, they offer a number of benefits to their members, including a critical response team that you can call 24 hours a day should you find yourself in a self-defense incident. They also have an attorney network that goes across the country, and like I just said, they have changed their program tremendously. So in addition to the things that we're going to talk about here in just a second, they also have a great training resource system for you that you guys can access. If you are a member, you can access it online in terms of self-defense, home defense type training, recommendations for doing so. All of that is available for members. And you can see here, they updated everything on June 5th. And you can see some of the coverages here have changed. So pretty much every single one of them is to the benefit of the actual member itself. There's a number of them. There will be a link down below if you guys are interested in it here. But once again, check out that link if you're interested in becoming a member of the United States Concealed Carry Association. Now let's get back into the sniper team number 4. So again, what we know about them is that they were a local police team. Several places have reported that it was Butler Police specifically. However, I think that's somewhat dubious at this point because, like we said, they only had 12 patrol officers. That is straight from their own website. So the fact that they would have a counter sniper team, it's not impossible at all. I just think it's more likely that once again, it was actually a state police team and not the actual local police that was reported several times. Now they were positioned, that this is according to Dan Bongino, according to his Secret Service sources. And the decision to do so initially was reported that the team was supposed to be on the roof, and for whatever reason, they just didn't go on the roof on that particular day. However, what came out, I believe this came out Wednesday or Thursday, again from Dan Bongino, was that the window location was chosen by the Secret Service themselves on a site visit a week prior to the actual rally being held. So that is very strange for several different reasons. So if we just think about like the way, so if it was a military sniper in an urban environment, being inside of a room makes a ton of sense. Pretty much all the modern military urban snipers that you guys are going to read about or see in real life are going to either be inside of a room or on a roof that has a jagged edge. And the reason for that is, take a look at like Counter Sniper Team 1, for example, right? In a law enforcement context, it has a very different tactical application than it would in a military context, if I can speak. So those guys being on top of the roof, being visible, that does a few things. Number one, it gives you ISR, or information, surveillance and reconnaissance information as a position. So that position, that sniper team is able to see lots of things. They're able to call in different types of things. They just have a wide field of view, 360, outside of course, dead space from whatever position they're in. And that makes a lot of sense for a police and law enforcement type of counter sniper application. You want people to know, bad guys that is, you want people to know that there are counter snipers in position. You want them to see them as a deterrent. Additionally, obviously, being on top of a roof just gives you more line of sight in terms of when you can engage. Like I talked about earlier, there's different ways to set up inside of a building to maximize where you can engage. It's never going to be as much as it would be with a rooftop position like that, right? So there's always pros and cons when taking any type of position. Now, why would they be inside the building? And why would the Secret Service plan that a week out? I have no idea. I'm just going to try to make an educated guess. So the only thing that has been concrete that has come out in terms of news reports is that about a week prior, which would line up timeline-wise, there was an Iranian threat to President Trump that was identified by the Secret Service and other intel agencies. So if that was the case, and we're talking about an actual professional enemy, not just a random 20-year-old kid with an AR-15, then having a counter sniper team in a position that is unknown and not visible to the bad guy would make sense. And why do I say that? Well, let's just hypothetically say that it was an Iranian, I'm not saying it was, but say the threat was like 5 Iranian trained marksmen. Well, if that was the case, they could easily time up taking out the counter sniper teams and then engaging the principal, right? If you had multiple people on multiple angles who were trained and actually knew what they were doing. And then if that was the case, then you would have no one to cover that angle because they would all be taken out, because they would all be exposed. In that case, having a reserve team, if you will, to act in the counter sniper role makes a ton of sense. So that's really the only thing that is logical in my mind as to why Secret Service would choose to put someone in a building. Now, what that doesn't do is it doesn't excuse the fact that that roof still wasn't covered by another counter sniper team. As I mentioned in my video on Monday, the Secret Service counter sniper teams train in twos. I don't know if they have the ability to split off and work separate. I don't know if that's something they do and it's just outside of their SOP and they're not allowed to do it. If that was the case, then I just think the positions were chosen very, very poorly, and it was a risk that probably should never have been assumed, given that the building was 100 to 150 yards away from where the president was going to be standing. Whether they assumed that the police in their inside sniper position was going to cover that roof, I don't know. But if they did, that was absolutely a failure planning, in my opinion. And the reason that was initially given by the Secret Service director, which has drawn a lot of, or rather has generated a lot of memes, and rightfully so, but it also should generate a lot of questions as to why she would ever say something like this, was that she said they chose not to put the team there because it was a sloped roof. Now, number one, the roof is barely sloped, if that, in several photos that have come out. Essentially, she's insinuating that it was dangerous if they were on that roof. Now, several photos have come out of that roof, and if you actually look at them, it looks like there's actually some sort of traction type material on the roof, so there's absolutely no way that that would be unsafe. And of course, since then, there's been photos of the FBI standing on it with a hose washing it down, so clearly not a safety risk as it was stated. And again, just the fact that she said that should raise a lot of questions, because it seems like they're trying to deflect or just absolutely not tell the truth for some reason. And why? I mean, that we don't know at this point. Getting into timeline, there are several different timelines that have come out. They're all pretty close at this point, and all the timelines are coming from a Senate briefing that occurred on the 18th, the afternoon of the 18th, and I'm gonna roll it in here on your screen so you guys can see it. But basically, at 5:10, Crooks was identified as a person of interest by the Secret Service. Several reports are saying that both local police, and again, we don't know which agencies that would actually be. Was it the state police? Was it the highway patrol? We don't know. They're just local police, called it in, as well as Secret Service snipers called it in as well. They said that he was spotted with a rangefinder. We're going to get into that here in just a second at 5:30. And what is a rangefinder? Well, a rangefinder, well, we'll just get into it right now. We'll stop the timeline here and just kind of get into the equipment that is being alleged to have been used, because I think that's important for people. I know there's a lot of non-gun people that are probably watching this video. So, I actually had to check several backpacks before I found one that was large enough to accommodate the rifle in the condition that we were in right now. So what we know about the rifle, speaking of that, is it's been reported that it was a DPMS AR-15 that was purchased in 2013 by the shooter's father. There's been some conflicting reports as to when he was actually using it, but inside this backpack we have most of the equipment that he was alleged to have used outside of explosives, which we'll be getting into explosives here in just a second. I feel like this video is going to go way too long. But anyway, there's just a lot to go over. So in the backpack here, we have several things. He was reported to have had a rangefinder. That is what this is. So basically what it is something that you look through and you find an object in the center, you press a button, and it gives you the range of that item, whatever it is in terms of how far it is away from you. You can actually set it up into feet, yards, meters, etc. Most of these, like this is an older one, this is an older model right now. This one will accurately give you distances out to about 1,000 yards, depending on the conditions and the item that you're actually trying to find the range of. But everything within the complex of this, this event was being held at would easily be able to be used, are identified rather, and ranged with a basic rangefinder like this. Why would somebody have one of these? Well, there's really two things that people use these for outside of commercial uses. Obviously, golf is number one, and the other is shooting, right? To be able to get your trajectory right and have your hold right for the distances that you are actually shooting at. Additionally, he was found to have had 3 magazines on him, spare ones, in addition to the one that was in the firearm itself. Now, again, speaking of the firearm, DPMS, AR-15, very basic, kind of budget gun. It's not the same DPMS that was around today. It's actually a different gun. However, your standard AR-15 can be broken down quite easily to fit into a backpack. Again, it's going to have to be somewhat of a large backpack like this one that we have here. But as you guys can see, it can be broken down into 2 components. There are other mechanisms for breakdown AR-15s, but from all reports and the images that we've seen, that's not been the case. But this is your standard upper receiver on an AR-15. This particular one is a Geissele. And then your lower receiver, and you can actually slap them together. I can't do it on YouTube because we will get banned, and that will have your rifle ready to shoot out of your bag. With the equipment out of the way, let's get back to it. So again, 5:30, he is spotted with a rangefinder. At 5:52, he's spotted on the roof by the Secret Service. Again, this is according to the Secret Service as they testified to members of the Senate. At 6:02, President Trump took the stage. At 6:12, Crooks fires his first shots. Should also note there, one thing that's not in that timeline, but was also stated during the Senate briefing, is that the special agent in charge, I believe they're called the SAC, so the on-the-ground commander for the Secret Service, at the time President Trump was actually shot, was on the phone with the command center, if you will, talking about the threat that was on the roof, i.e. Crooks with a rifle. So I say that to say that they knew there was someone on the roof approximately 150 yards away. I'm not sure if they had positively identified a rifle or anything like that, or if they had deconflicted that with the position of number 4 sniper team. Whether or not there was some confusion, I don't know. But one thing I will say is that they definitely knew that there was a person on the roof with a rifle. The guy was wearing a gray shirt and shorts. Certainly doesn't look like a law enforcement officer, at least as you would typically think. And they let President Trump get on the stage anyway. These events are very often delayed for a number of reasons. So it certainly wouldn't be unreasonable to delay President Trump taking the stage, going and clearing off that roof, and then letting him on stage. For whatever reason, that didn't happen. And once again, at the time President Trump was actually shot in the head by Crooks, the special agent in charge was on the phone with the command center discussing his presence on the roof. That is a crazy piece of information that has come out from the Secret Service. So with that, let's move on. Next, we're going to play a couple videos that we didn't have when we made our last video. So one of them is going to be from behind the actual stage where President Trump was speaking. You'll see that the audience noticed that there was a bunch of people running towards Crooks's location. They were able to see it. Local law enforcement was actually running in that direction. So people around President Trump were aware that something was going on in that direction. Again, none of the Secret Service agents around President Trump asked him to step off stage. They let him continue to speak, as we all saw. And then after that, we're going to roll in a video from a local town manager talking about the actions that the actual Butler police did when they encountered the shooter. That was one thing that was earlier reported, was that police did see them. This gentleman here provides greater detail than we had prior to that. So let's check out those videos.
Uh-oh. Where are they running to? Thank you, Trump! Thank you, Trump! Thank you, Trump! Thank you, Trump! Oh wow, where are they running to?
Did in fact see an individual on the roof with a weapon.
You saw the shooter.
He did.
Your officers are on patrol. They hear that there is a suspicious person on the rooftop. What did your officers do?
So our officers in the area started to converge on the building. My understanding is they did a full perimeter walk of the building. Weren't able to see up on the roof. Two of the officers went to what appeared to be the lowest point from ground to roof. One of the officers actually boosted the second officer up high enough for him to grab hold of the roof. When he was able to pull his head up over the roof, he did in fact see an individual on the roof with a weapon.
You saw the shooter.
He did.
And what did the shooter do?
Turned towards him, had the barrel of his weapon pointed at the officer.
At that point, the officer's hanging on
Yes.
to the side of the roof,
Yes.
unable to pull a gun out,
Unable to
unable to defend himself, unable to reach his radio.
Any of that. Yeah. Yeah. Strictly defensive movement for him to lower his head, duck, lost his own grip, right? Fell approximately 8 feet to the ground.
That's a steep drop.
It's a good drop. Yes.
Did he get hurt?
He did.
In that moment, did they realize there's a threat right now to the former president?
They did. So both the boosting officer and the officer that fell were both on the radio, indicating that there was an individual on the roof that did in fact have a weapon.
Who did they radio?
So there was a blanket tactical channel being
Everyone
used.
heard it.
Everyone that was on that tactical channel heard it. Yes.
So one very obvious question I had after watching the video there of that town manager stating that his officers went around the perimeter of the building, couldn't find any ladders, any way to get up, had to be boosted onto there, was where were the ladders, right? Because we've all seen the footage now, the overhead footage. Initial footage showed one ladder that was very large, and then secondary footage that we've seen since then, since Monday, has shown an additional 5-foot ladder. I should also note, again, for anybody who's new, which I doubt there's many at this point and hasn't heard this, multiple reports from the FBI and Secret Service have said that the shooter went to Home Depot either on the day of or the day prior, it's unclear based on different reporting, and purchased a ladder at the Home Depot. Mind you, I'm sure there's security footage at every Home Depot, and we still haven't seen any of that, but getting back to the point I was trying to make there is that according to Dan Bongino, I believe this was Thursday, he stated that the ladders that were shown in the videos were put up there by law enforcement afterwards, and that it is most likely believed that the shooter crooks gained access to the roof by climbing up on an air conditioning unit and getting access that way. That would match with the initial reports that came out Saturday night of several different eyewitnesses that said they saw him climbing up the side of the building to get on the roof. So that would all match up, and it appears that perhaps those ladders were put there afterwards. Again, I don't know that for sure, but that is the latest reporting that we have on that. The next topic that we need to tackle is going to be the subject of explosives. Several reports have come out stating that the killer was in possession of at least 3 IEDs. Apparently 2 of them were in his vehicle that he drove to the site, and that on his person was a transmitter, which could be used as an ignition device for these explosives. So basically, if you look at what they're claiming is the transmitter, there's several different buttons in there. You can program it different ways. How that actually happened on his particular device, I don't know. We don't know the details of that. We probably never will. But essentially, that gets transmitted to a receiver that's on the bomb, and either it generates an electrical signal or activates some sort of blasting cap. There's different ways that explosives work. I am not going to get into all that in this video, but many of you guys out there are subject matter experts, so feel free to opine down below in the comments section. But that raises some questions, right? So in America, for those who don't know, to get explosives, the ones that are like commercially available, it's very, very heavily regulated, very heavily tracked, as you would imagine it would be. However, there are a number of different types of explosives that you can make at home. These formulas are not super difficult, and many people, you know, look at the Oklahoma City bombing, that type of product could still be produced today based on commercially available items, if you will. So the thing that struck me though about it is that, again, this person allegedly lived at home with his parents, and if you actually look at the neighborhood where his home was, that also raises some questions, right? So if you're actually mixing these types of chemicals, the most obvious ones anyway, and this is me assuming here, I don't know this for sure, I'm assuming he's using the ones that are easiest to make because that would make sense, right? So if he's doing that, a few things have to happen that would be odd to me that no one would notice. So number one, it gives off a very, very strong odor. it just does. Like when people are mixing these types of chemicals, it's very, very pungent, and anyone around would notice. So anyone in the house would definitely notice, i.e. his parents, and probably people in the neighborhood would notice as well. It would smell very weird. People would probably call in and think there was some sort of gas leak or something like that. Additionally, wherever you're doing this and you're mixing these types of chemicals, it has to be temperature stable. So you can't have just like right now, it's very, very hot outside, which is why I'm sitting in the shade. But it's well into the 90s right now, and you wouldn't be able to do it in these conditions. You would have to wait for a certain type of environmental conditions. Obviously, I'm not going to explain all this on YouTube, but in order to pull that off, you would have to know those things. So where did he do it, if he did it? Or did someone give him these? And if someone gave him these, then who, right? Those are huge questions. And I haven't seen, honestly, a lot of people looking into it, but it definitely is something that needs to be answered. Additionally, the FBI has stated that they found no evidence on any of his electronic equipment, computer, cell phone, etc., that he had been researching explosive device. So generally speaking, you don't learn how to do these things in high school, which he was a recent graduate of high school 2 years ago. And if he didn't have a lot of research online in terms of how to do it or on a cell phone, that definitely raises further questions. Next up, we're going to talk about the actual shots that were fired, where they came from, etc. This has been an extremely controversial topic with multiple shooter theories being passed around the internet. And again, these theories are allowed to perpetuate because we have so many unanswered questions. But I do think it's worth getting into, and I want to talk about the shots that were fired, the audio analysis of it that several people have done in this particular case. Chris Martinson and Mike Adams, I will reference you to their audio analysis. Additionally, Paul over at Legally Armed America had an interesting video incorporating some of this audio analysis as well that has recently been put up. I recommend you guys check all those sources out. I will not be like digging into it. I'm just going to play a couple clips, let you guys listen to it, and then I'm going to kind of give you my thoughts on it based on where I know certain groups of individuals were at the time, at least what we're being told right now anyway. And so one thing I do want to reference is the article that CNN published, I believe relatively, or it might have been even Monday or Tuesday. And what's interesting about this article is essentially, it came out relatively early, and what the article says, I'll roll it right in here on your screen. Forensic analysis suggests that as many as three weapons were fired at the Trump rally in Butler, Pennsylvania on Saturday. I agree with that. That is my conclusion as well, is that 3 different rifles were fired. We'll get into why that is here in just a second. The FBI Sunday that the shooter acted alone. It says here the first 3 shots were consistent with alleged weapon A. The next 5 were consistent with alleged weapon B. And the final acoustic impulse was emitted by a possible weapon C per audio analysis by Caitlin Gregorius, director of the National Center for Media Forensics at the University of Colorado in Denver, and Cole Whitecotton, senior professional research associate at the same institution. So guys, they have audio equipment that I have no access to. They have software that can process this stuff way better than I can, and I'm not even going to attempt to do it. What I will say is, well, before I do that, let's roll in a couple different clips of a couple of different angles so that way you guys can hear what are probably different shots being fired, and then kind of come back to it.
Stay under here. He's on top of the roof. Don't go over there. He's on the roof, buddy.
Take a look at what happened.
So when analyzing that audio, another thing we have to analyze at the same time is going to be where people were who were hit, both President Trump as well as the other bystanders that were hit by rounds that were fired. And for that, again, the best person I've seen in terms of animating it, if you will, is a gentleman named Oliver Alexander on Twitter. I'm going to use a couple of his images here that will show where certain people were. All of his images and the lines that he has plotted out seem consistent with the site of where Crooks was killed at. Again, that seems to line up to me. That seems perfectly plausible. There are other people that have added positions in different places. Certainly, I'm not saying they're not possible at all. We don't know at this point. There's just too many unknowns. But what I will say about the actual shots being fired is that I think it is virtually a 100% certainty that the first 3 shots were fired by Crooks from the position that he was killed at. Both the timeline that elapsed between the snap and the crack. And so what that is, just again for new folks, is that especially with AR-15s, for example, they're firing supersonic ammunition. Pretty much all rifles are. And that rifle ammunition, depending on the load he's using, is going to be going anywhere between 27 to 3,200 feet per second. And so with that, the first thing you're going to hear is the supersonic crack. And then after that, you're going to hear the report of the actual rifle because the speed of sound is much slower. I would imagine in rural Pennsylvania, the speed of sound is roughly 1,100 feet per second, depending on the environmentals and things like that are going on at the time. So that's why you hear the crack, bang, crack, bang, crack, bang of the first 3 shots. After that, things get a little weird because the pitch of the rifles, if you will, shots seems to shift from both locations. And now I only rolled in 2 different forms of audio for you guys to check out. And both of those, I believe, were cell phone cameras that were actually recording it. And that alone has some gray area into it. Cell phone cameras record things differently than dedicated audio recording equipment would do. But I think it is entirely possible that the next 2 shots also came from Crook's location. Again, the distance rather between the crack bang of those 2 shots is very consistent in terms of distance away, if that makes sense. I think it was like 0.21 or 0.22 seconds in the distance. All the first 5 shots have that in common. And then the 6th shot, guys, I genuinely have no idea what to believe. I've watched several different presentations on it. I do not know where that shot came from at this point. That's where I'm at. I don't actually even have an educated guess on that. Because what ends up happening there is the crack to bang on that one is very different than any of the other subsequent shots that I can kind of make an educated guess as to where those come from. The 6th shot, again, I don't know. That's where I'm at. If you guys know, definitely let me know down below. What I will say is that the 7th shot, in terms of the distance between the snap and the bang, if you will, of the shots coming across the microphones, seems very consistent with what I pointed out in my video on Monday, stating that that is probably sniper position number 3 opening up on them. Additionally, it sounds like it is a suppressed shot, which makes sense, again, given what we know. And again, going back earlier in the video, sniper position number 3 very likely was manned by a Secret Service team based on the information that we have at this time. Again, two of them of the teams were Secret Service, 2 were local police. We know that one behind President Trump that everyone has seen, those were actual Secret Service uniform agents. The other ones were probably sniper team number 3. The actual distance associated with shot number 7 in terms of between the crack and the bang lines up pretty darn closely. There's no way I can tell you for sure if it is exact because I don't know the round they were using. I don't know the velocity it was using. As I guessed earlier in my video on Monday, basically going on the fact that they're using jar rifles, which really the only people I know that use those in terms of agencies are going to be Secret Service as well as U.S. Marshals, and they're probably chambered in 300 Win Mag, maybe 7mm. But with either one of those and the velocities that those projectiles will be going at, it is very likely, in my opinion, that shot number 7 came from there. After shot number 7, and in between shot number 6, I should say, right around that time, you hear some echoes. I don't know what to make of those. Again, I'm not an audio expert, but you do hear some of those, and some people are claiming those echoes are actually quieter, suppressed shots. Maybe. I don't know. However, from what I do know, in my opinion, the first 5 shots came from roughly the distance of where the shooter was. Again, I want to say I'm almost certain that the first 3 absolutely came from Crooks himself. The other thing that I kind of just have to think about, right, is that now they're telling us there's a counter sniper team in the building behind him. Another thing we have to talk about is the timeline that we went over earlier. I kind of glossed over it, but if you are rolling in this timeline as well as the videos that we've rolled in previously in the previous video where people are saying there's a guy on the roof, there's a guy on the roof, there's a guy on the roof. We also know that the Butler Township Police, again, went up there, made visual contact with the shooter on the roof. And that there was roughly 20 to 26 minutes. The exact timeline is, you're hearing it differently from different sources, but that is plenty of time, even if you're not using the same communication system, like the Secret Service is using different comms from the state police, who are using different comms from the Butler police. That is plenty of time to, on a command net, i.e. somebody with a cell phone who can actually call everyone, to deconflict that and have somebody approach the actual shooter himself. I should also note that there's been video rolled in approximately, or released, I should say, I'll roll it in, approximately an hour beforehand of the shooter going around and reconnoitering various sites, and nobody approaches him, even though at that point he had already been identified as a suspicious person. So if that's the case, why at no point during this time before he gets on the roof did any police officer just walk up to him and say, hey man, what are you doing? What are you doing here? Why are you here? Do you have anything interesting on you? Just, you know, the thing that cops typically do when they have a person that they find doing something suspicious. From everything we know, nothing happened there at that point. But getting back to what I was talking about with the counter sniper team is that the position where they were likely in terms of distance away from President Trump, is very similar in terms of distance, right? So within 50 feet. So the differences that you would hear in the shot profile could be very similar if they fired any shots from that position. And just thinking about it, say you're the counter sniper team that's in that second floor, right? And you hear, I mean, I'm sure they can audibly hear people yelling, somebody's on the roof, somebody's on the roof, somebody's on the roof. I would imagine they looked around, and at that point they could probably see the guy on the roof based on the different windows that are available for them to choose from. If that is the case, they were probably calling into the command center. Is that our guys? Is that our guys? Is there confusion on that? They don't know. Probably have the rifles trained right on him. He cracks off 3 shots. It's entirely possible that those 2 of those shots, which do sound a little bit different, it's entirely possible that 2 of those shots were from that counter sniper team and hit him. I should also note that there's a video, and if I can roll it in, I will, but there's a video of a man saying after those shots went off that he's hit, he was rolling towards the crowd and to be careful. If that's the case, and then the 7th shot comes in and impacts him in the head, which is what I believe is probable.
I hope he's turning this way. Be careful, guys.
That did happen. They say, oh, he's dead. You can hear the people in the crowd saying that as that happened. So I'm not saying the counter sniper team behind him engaged. I'm saying it's entirely possible they did. And if you just think of a reasonable reaction from a counter sniper team that is right behind someone 50 feet away, and they're like, is he one of our guys? Is he one of our guys? And then all of a sudden he fires 3 rounds at the president, and you see that as the counter sniper team, then you engage. That makes sense as a possibility to me. That said, all of the media reports I have seen have referenced that the Secret Service is the one who actually fired the lethal shot. That could still be consistent with what I just said. We don't know that at this time. It's a logical thing because to me, if there was a counter sniper team in that building in the second floor, which again, we have to assume based on what we've been told so far, then based on all the different things that were happening leading up to that, they had to be looking around to see what was happening. It doesn't make sense that they wouldn't have at minimum been looking around and had the ability to ID him from that point. Now, they may not have been on their actual bolt rifles that they were using as a suppressor team. They may have used a different type of rifle. Again, that would make sense as well. A lot of sniper units will have a primary sniper role, a sniper weapon rather, whether it be, a bolt action or whatever, and then keep it an M4 or an AR-15 in case they have to engage up close and quickly. If that was the case, then that could have been the reports. Guys, I don't know how far I want to go down that rabbit hole. We're going to end it there with the audio analysis, but I do think it's important, and I think more will probably come of that, especially if we're not getting additional information. That is some primary source information that can be analyzed by people who are very smart, much smarter than me, and have better equipment than me to do so. I feel like this video is getting long and it could be much longer. We tried to make it as short as possible. We're going to close it out here with some questions at the end that we're going to discuss. Before we do that, though, we do need to thank the main channel sponsor, and that is going to be the good folks over at Brownells. For folks that don't know Brownells, they carry basically all of the cool stuff that we've been talking about throughout this video, guns, ammunition, firearms, optics, etc., as well as lots of gunsmithing supplies, so definitely check them out. Additionally, this is going to be a Mug Club video for folks that don't know. We make exclusive content over on Mug Club for members only. This week, myself, I'm going to be talking about J.D. Vance, his stance on guns, what we know about him since he has recently been selected as the vice president, whether or not we think he is a good pro Second Amendment candidate or not, that will be covered on Mug Club. There's other creators over there making exclusive content. So if you guys are interested in that, there should be a code here on your screen, as well as a website that you can go over there and sign up for that. So with that, some questions. There's a lot of questions. These are just some key ones that came up to me. I'm sure many of you also have questions outside of this. And if you do, post them down below. I think the more information that we can get out there, the better, and the closer we'll be to knowing what actually happened in this scenario. So first off, the big one I have, as obviously a gun guy, is why haven't we seen the rifle? Again, it's been reported that it was a DPMS made in 2013. There's been 2 different models I've seen reported. One of them is the Oracle, which I have a review on if you guys want to see what the rifle's capable of. The one I tested in my review in 2017, it's up on my YouTube channel. It got 1-inch groups at 100 yards, so it was certainly a capable rifle for accuracy, but of course that had magnification on it. And we have not seen how the rifle was configured. At least I haven't anyway. If you guys have, let me know down below in the comments or at any of my socials as well. So why haven't we seen that? It doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? So if they're claiming that's what it was, we should have seen it. Additionally, we should have pre-plotted out or seen visual evidence, photos, etc. of all of the shell casings where they are. That would tell us a lot, right? So there's a lot of these theories out there that there were multiple shooters. And number one, I think there were multiple shooters, just to be clear. I'm just not saying they're bad guy multiple shooters. I don't know that. But I do think it's more likely than not that number one, crooks fired. I'm pretty convinced of that. And then more likely than not, 2 different law enforcement sources at least fired as well. But point being is that there's a very easy way to prove that forensically and just let everyone know and just take pictures. Additionally, if we could see photos of the actual shell casings, we would have a better idea of the actual ballistics in terms of velocity of the rounds that we're talking about. Because right now we're estimating because we don't know the actual data. And that's very important, especially when talking about the audio analysis. So why don't we have the positions of all the shots fired been released? So again, I hypothesized where the sniper team number 3 was in my video on Monday based on evidence and photos that I had seen. I have still not seen an official FBI or Secret Service or any other investigative agency come out and identify that location. I still personally believe I'm right based on everything that we've seen so far on that one. But people have not identified where the sniper team was that engaged crooks, where that shot was fired from. Again, in my analysis and based on the audio analysis that I referenced earlier, I'm pretty confident that 7th shot came from that location from a suppressed rifle. But why hasn't that been discussed? That seems like something that could be easily explained in a brief that would let everyone know where these things were. And that way, folks who are doing the overlays, I believe, like I referenced earlier, Oliver Alexander, who's doing these overlays, and there's other people doing overlays that show different positions. That's fine. It's all interesting information, but it would allow us, the public, to have a much better understanding of what happened. Bullets don't fly sideways. They just don't. They fly straight. Obviously, wind can impact them and stuff like that. But having those locations with the brass photographed, as well as the exact type of weapon system that was used for each shot, would clear a lot of this up. We don't know any of that yet. Additionally, we haven't seen any security footage of the places they say he visited. So again, they say he visited the range that he was a member of, I believe 2 days before, the day before the shooting. They said he visited that range on Friday, did some training with the actual rifle in use. We have no security footage of that at all. They say he visited Home Depot, picked up a ladder, but they're also saying the ladder was not used on the location. I admit it would be very strange if he was actually carrying a ladder at the rally, that it wouldn't be noticed. But who knows at this point? But again, we've seen none of the security footage of the Home Depot of him buying the ladder, although it's been claimed. We've seen none of the receipts. That just hasn't been released at all. Why? I don't know. Additionally, his cell phone location, the days leading up to the rally, has not been released. Several people have said that his cell phone was geolocated earlier in the day near Butler Farm grounds. However, I've not seen any official reports of that. That would be very easy to release if they had it. It would also be very easy to release essentially his route on the way, because again, he lived an hour away and reportedly went to several different positions. And additionally, they're saying he flew a drone. That drone data is concrete, right? that footage is there. It has all the geolocation information as well as where it landed, so i.e. where he was operating it from. None of that has been released to the public. Why? I don't know. I can't think of a good reason for it. Additionally, we have seen no ballistics report from his body. I say that because earlier in the video, I just hypothesized that perhaps the counter sniper team behind him engaged him, and then a final shot was fired at him after he was seen moving in the crowd. I have to hypothesize that based on videos that are grainy from a cell phone on the day of the shooting, whereas there's no doubt in my mind that right now his body has been analyzed by forensics experts that could tell us exactly where bullets entered, exited, etc. And we don't have that information. All we have is that one image reportedly of his head wound, which obviously we're not going to roll in here on YouTube. But why hasn't that been given to us with the calibers used and the directions they were fired from? Seems like it would be a pretty simple thing to do, and it would answer a lot of the questions that are out there on the internet. However, we do not have any of that information at this time. So unfortunately, that is where we're going to end the video. Again, I really would like to get you guys input on the last video we did up. There was a lot of great conversations and a lot of great points made down below in the video comments, which I appreciate. And the best place to comment is on my various social media pages. Right now, Twitter and Truth have just been excellent. Like I mentioned earlier, my Twitter has been where all of this primary source information can be located if you guys want to check it out there. But a lot of people have been asking really good questions over there as well. Instagram, Facebook, not so much, just because it's a trash app and I just can't post all the stuff over there because this is sensitive stuff and Meta doesn't like a lot of that. But definitely follow me on all of those various places. Additionally, if you like this video and you're new here, definitely subscribe. I don't plan on doing a ton of breakdowns like this. However, it seems to be something that you guys like. So if it is, we will continue to do them. So hit the subscribe button. If you've subscribed and you're not seeing 2 to 4 videos a week here on the channel, you can sign up for my email at the website here on your screen. This email goes out once a month. It has all of the videos since the previous month's email went out, and something new at a different site, which is mrgunsgear.com/SMS. You can now sign up for our text message service. That's about to launch, hopefully in the next week or two, but you can get signed up right now and get your cell phone over there, so that way when stuff happens, I can go straight from me to you and get you guys that info in real time as well. Then, as always, we have our daily deals email. You can sign up for that at the website here on your screen. This has 8 of the best deals that we find around the internet on things like laser rangefinders, optics, etc. If it is in that email on that particular day, it's the cheapest I know of for that particular product anywhere on the internet because I've already done the product comparisons for you. So that way, hopefully, it saves you guys some time, saves you some money, and I think that's pretty much it. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate it. Now we're going to head over to Mug Club, talk about JD Vance.